Welcome to the War Academy channel. In today's program, we are going to analyze what is considered the most successful battle of the German army in the entire Second World War, due to the large number of enemy troops they killed. We are referring to the Battle of Kyiv, which took place between the months of August and September 1941, in the midst of Operation Barbarossa. In it, it is estimated that the German army managed to pocket and capture some 665,000 Soviet soldiers, this being, therefore, the largest encirclement of troops in all of military history. To give us an idea, a year later, during the Battle of Stalingrad, the number of Germans who were finally captured by the Soviets was about 100,000, that is, about 6 times less. Although it is true that the number of total casualties of these two battles is quite similar. With that in mind, and before we get to the Battle of Kyiv itself, let's briefly get into context. It all started 2 months earlier with the start of Operation Barbarossa, in which Germany invaded the Soviet Union. As you know, the approach of this operation was to divide the German armies into 3 groups, the objective of the northern group being the city of Leningrad. The center of the group is the Soviet capital of Moscow, and in the south the city of Rostov. These objectives were not entirely clear, and if conditions permitted, it was possible to continue advancing. After the first weeks, in which the different offensives were advancing at a good pace, the German army was losing inertia and strong resistance was encountered around Smolensk and in the Ukraine area, since it was there that the concentration of Soviet troops was larger. This was reconfiguring the front line, until by the end of August 1941, a large hole had been left in the surroundings of Kyiv, this sector coinciding more or less, where the southern and central groups joined. This was the moment in which one of the most questionable decisions of the Second World War was made, and that is to direct the Central Army Group to the south, to firstly conquer the city of Kyiv, and secondly, equalize the front line, thus protecting his right flank, which was important for his next advance on Moscow. The question of debate is whether they should have continued to Moscow, which is speculated to have fallen into German hands, or whether they were right to go astray. We will let everyone express their opinion in the comment box. In any case, this action of descending towards Kyiv caused one of the biggest battles of this conflict, which we will analyze below. The first thing we have to see is the German strategy, which had as its objective the pocketing of all the Soviet troops that were found in the vicinity of Kyiv. This included some 750,000 soldiers, with more than 1,000 battle tanks and numerous other materials. To do this, a north pincer had been proposed, commanded by Guderian, and another south, led by von Rundstedt. After stabilizing the front at Smolensk, the German offensive began from the Army Group Center area to the south, very timidly in early August. Meanwhile, south of Kyiv, the Soviets had established themselves in defensive positions on the eastern bank of the Dnieper River, and the front had stabilized. However, the Germans managed to secretly establish a bridgehead at the height of the Ukrainian city of Lubny. General Zhukov had warned Stalin long ago of the possibility that the city of Kyiv would be surrounded by the Germans if they gave up their attempt to take Moscow and headed south. However, his warning had been ignored by the Germans. Stalin, who continued to think that the Germans were going to throw everything at Moscow, and that these were diversionary attacks. Furthermore, Stalin had no intention of giving up Kyiv without a fight, and he was not going to allow the Soviet army to make a strategic withdrawal without further ado. Kyiv was, among other things, the third most populous city in the Soviet Union, only behind Moscow itself and Leningrad. It also had an important industry, which had not been evacuated, so that this gesture would not be considered as weakness against the Ukrainians. As we know today, and as we saw in the program with Carlos Caballero-Yarado on Operation Barbarossa, in the Ukraine there was a strong opposition against the Moscow regime, but unfortunately for the Germans, they did not know how to play it in their favor. In any case, Stalin's orders were that the city must be defended at all costs and that it could not be lost. This being the case, as the German northern pincer descended, the Soviets began to get more nervous. Although the reports indicated that the German army was stretching itself too far and that it would soon end its offensive, as it would not be able to reach the Dnieper River and keep them fenced. It was about the beginning of September, when the German North Pincer reached the height of the city of Konotop, and was preparing to deal the last blow. The distance that remained to complete the siege, reaching the Dnieper River, was still 250 kilometers. So the Soviet commanders calculated that it would be impossible for the Germans to complete this route. This is when the Germans brought out their element of surprise, launching another offensive from the south that had previously bypassed the Dnieper River. This changed everything, and it was no longer 250 kilometers that the North Pincer had to travel, because together with the south, only 125 were enough. Once this offensive began, the Soviets were completely surpassed on both flanks, and on September 13th, the two German contingents touched, although it was not until the 17th when the bag around Kyiv was completely closed. A few days before the siege was completed, and given the risk that more than 700,000 Soviet soldiers would be surrounded, Stalin raised the possibility of being able to withdraw them. But it was too late. Being the situation like this, the Germans began to advance towards the city of Kyiv itself on September 19th, encountering strong Soviet resistance. There was some attempt from outside to rescue these encircled troops, as well as from within to get out, but they were useless, only about 15,000 men being able to get out of this encirclement. The soldiers who were trapped in Kyiv fought intensely, but soon ammunition and even food became scarce, as they lacked any kind of supplies. This resistance lasted until September 26th, when the Red Army soldiers capitulated, estimating around 665,000 soldiers that the Germans took prisoner. In addition, thousands of cannons, mortars and weapons of all kinds were also captured. As a whole, the Soviet Southern Front had lost more than 700,000 soldiers and practically all of their material, leaving their front completely shattered. This victory was considered by the Germans as the greatest victory in world history, and to a certain extent it was if one takes into account the large number of enemy soldiers, who were knocked out of action in just a couple of weeks. However, it did not have a major impact on the course of the war, since the Soviet army was able to recover from this loss of men and material in a very short time. With respect to the territory gained, it did have some impact, because the entire southern wing was able to advance significantly, even reaching the front line, and reaching over the Dnieper River to Rostov in future offensives. He also left the southern flank of Army Group Center under cover, and the Germans were now ready to continue their advance on Moscow. As is known, despite these spectacular victories, finally, the essential objectives of Barbarossa would fail, and given the great resilience of the Soviet army, they were of little use. In any case, I'll leave you in the description the program that we made analyzing all the keys of the Barbarossa operation, so that you can understand in a broader way what were the real failures of the Germans and the Soviet Union. Without further ado, I hope this video has been interesting for you, and I encourage you to leave your considerations in the comment box. And anyway, that's all. Subscribe if you liked the video, and see you in the next program. See you soon.